Good afternoon. I am here again with Barry Goodman from Birkdale Transition Partners in Chicago, Illinois. And we've worked through Discover. We've then spent 3 sessions talking through the deep dive analysis. And today we are going to talk through the report, the analysis that Core Value was generated on Core Value's client, and just what that analysis is telling Barry about where his client is and what they need to work on to reach their goals. Good afternoon, Barry. Great to be with you again.
It's great to be with you.
So I'm going to log in. You can see I'm at mycorevalue.com. I'm going to click log in, and here I go into my account. Now I have logged into my, this is my demo area, the dashboard, my advisor dashboard, and we are working with a client. So I'm going to click down, and it is Strong Distributors. I'll click on the name, Strong Distributors, and in we go. Well, now we've finished the deep dive analysis. Maybe I'll go back for a sec. We've finished the deep dive analysis. Current level, we're at the growth plan. We've completed 0% of the growth plan. And this client has a core value rating of 50 with a value gap of 5.3 million. So I'm going to click on Strong, and here we are. We're going into the business detail for Strong Distributors. And you'll notice that unlike the deep dive analysis, we're accessing this, again, out of our advisor dashboard, just like we did when launching Discover. So what have we learned about Strong Distributors? And what Barry and I are going to do is we're going to spend the next half hour or so talking through what we've learned about this client. Now, to recap, this is a transportation and warehousing company. They're a distributor. They're looking to strengthen their operations, all right? Although Barry is a very experienced exit planner, this client is looking in the first instance to what, Barry, how would you characterize what your client has asked you to do?
They're looking to protect what they have and to strengthen what they have, but they're also looking in the future as to what they need to do to become transition ready and be able to exit their business.
Got it.
And to
okay.
With options in order to do it.
You know, what's interesting is this tracks somewhat with the 3 dimensions of growth. So they're looking to harvest the value of the business or to transition that business, and there's open question whether it's to the next generation or to a net new management, net new owner. But for the first instance, they're really trying to create predictability in the business. How do we stabilize this thing so it becomes easier to run, so that we have predictable profits, predictable cash flow, and that we're not staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. worried about the fires in the lobby. Does that sound about right, Barry?
That sounds exactly right.
Very cool.
And
go ahead.
One step further, looking at this business and how they can run the business without the owner being involved day to day.
Yeah, and if we tease that out a little bit, I'm thinking here of a different client, of an aircraft parts company down associated with United Technologies down in Hartford. And here the father had founded the company, the son had an MBA, came into the company, and they didn't want to sell the company to the son. They wanted to, the husband and wife who had been the founding generation wanted to retire, but they needed to continue to pull cash out of the business. And their concern was, their big risk factor was a question in their mind as to whether their son near term could manage the business in a way that would generate the required cash flow to fund their retirement. In a sense, to buy them out using the cash flow of the company, which is fairly common. And they used Core Value, and it sounds like Janus is not the real, this is a real company, but we're using fictitious names. It sounds like Janus is thinking down that same path. Is that about right?
Exactly. Janus has the next generation that would like to come into the business, but they may or may not have the expertise or the backbone to run it. So
Yep.
being able to have those options.
Yeah. I have a good friend whose two children are now in their 40s who really wanted to get involved in the business. They were in their early 30s when they, voiced wanting to get involved in the business. And he took an interesting turn. He turned them into brand ambassadors, and they're a hospitality business. And rather than putting them in charge of actual tactics, he put them in a more of a strategic role as they're not using the term brand ambassador, but that's what their jobs are, and they love it. Right? They're able to go around helping the business be successful with their mere presence. They have a household name that you'd readily recognize, and having the next generation, this would be the third generation involved in the business, is very good for the business. But making that decision, which is the kind of analysis that Barry and his colleagues do, has really helped the business continue to prosper. All right. Well, what do we know about strong distributors now that we've done the deep dive analysis? And where I would start is I'm going to start by clicking on reports. So we have a number of areas we can go for information. And when I get a call from someone like Barry, from you guys, says, "Hey, George, can you look at this company and help me read the tea leaves?" We go a couple of places. We can click on reports and get high-level information. And then I like to drill down into these two, the operational value report and the growth strategy report. So let's start with clicking on reports and see what we know about the company. Now, keep in mind, this is a successful company. It's a company that's doing $50 million a year. It's been in business for a long time. It is profitable. So although we're going to talk about some problems, this is not to say that this company is hemorrhaging and bleeding out. This company is profitable. Janice, the CEO, really simply, for the first instance, wants to make the company, wants to stabilize, to bring some confidence into how the business is run, and to make it, bring some predictability into our operations. So I'm going to start, Barry, if I might, by just jumping on this enterprise value. The name of the company is Core Value. The technology is Core Value Software. What the technology does is calculate. We have the word value right in our name, and that's a blessing and a curse. So let's talk about value in context. And I just got a terrific testimonial that we'll be adding to the website. Someone who's been doing business with us for a long time, just ran a company through Biz Equity. He also ran them through Core Value. This is an exit plan, or actually, Barry, it's a name it's Clark Langrel, right? A name you recognize. Do you know Clark, Barry?
I know Clark well.
Yeah. So he just ran a business through Biz Equity and through Core Value, because he's getting ready to do an exit plan. And the valuation is interesting, but it's not actionable. It doesn't point out some of the things we're going to discuss here. And he came back, as did a large bank when they did due diligence with us. The valuation through Biz Equity, which is a valuation with a capital V, and the enterprise value that Core Value calculated, were within $100,000 of each other. Good number. Current estimate of value, the enterprise value for this business, what would somebody pay after completing due diligence? $6.8 million. Now, the company, if it was able to earn a multiple at the top end of the range of multiples, would be worth $12 million. So the value gap, the delta between enterprise value and potential value at today's revenues and profits, right? At today's revenues and profits, $5.3 million. So if we want to talk about value, this is where the conversation is going to be. But Janice wants to talk about making her company easier to run. So we're not going to get too hung up on value today. But since we know that she ultimately wants to transition the business, we're going to want anything we do with Janice, we should be keeping an eye on value. It's keeping an eye on risk mitigation. Is that how you'd approach it, Barry?
Oh, yes, because the value gap is a key number.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, this is saying to Janice, the value of your life's work is $5.3 million of the value of your life's work is at risk. And that is a powerful motivator.
Exactly. So,
okay. So what else do we know? Just at a glance, we know that there's a significant value gap. We know that their core value rating is a C+. They're not an A or a B student. They're a C student when it comes to running the company. And we've identified a number of red flags. Okay, strategic direction, the culture, reporting relationships. I skipped over risk and insurance because that's relatively easy to solve. Reporting relationships, a little thornier. Roles and responsibilities, directly related. Policies and process. Look at all these internal issues. Kind of anticipates our next blog post. Internal issues. And so when we start canceling Janus, I'm going to jump, I'll jump into their rating. So when we look at this company at a glance, we can see where their company's strong. They have a well-diversified customer base, and they have legal well in hand. And where are they weak? Well, they're at their weakest in their operational drivers. They have a score of 42 for their operational drivers and 59 for market drivers. These are the forces that work on the company from outside, and these are the forces that work inside the company. And when we think in terms of making this company easier to run, I'll just tick down them. If we go to company overview, this is strategy. Where are we going? Where do we want to be tomorrow? Financial processes. Do we have control of our numbers? Do we have a good process for collecting our numbers, both financial numbers and critically operational reports? They're scoring a 46 out of 10. I mean, a 4.6 out of 10. Sales and marketing process, a 4.9 out of 10. These are causing agita. The ability to deliver on the promises made to the market by scale, 3.4 out of 10, a 35. That is a failing grade. Customer satisfaction, they don't even really track it, 1.8 out of 10. Senior management, look at all of these internal factors and how weak they are. HR and senior management are a mess, 0.6 out of 10. They don't even get a whole point. And then innovation, we're going to leave that alone. That gets into growing the company. But we have a number of areas here where we can tell at a glance that the company has significant bottlenecks to reaching their goal. Anything you would see, see in this analysis, Barry, that you'd be highlighting to Janus?
Nothing more than what you've already done. It seems that process is a key element here. They're apparently lacking in almost every area. It'd be interesting to dig down into financial, sales, and marketing operations and so forth to see what specific drivers are holding them back. And
when we so if you watch the rest of the series, ladies and gentlemen, you see that we've talked about finance, and they have a bit of a star internally in their current CFO, and it's more of a controller CFO. However, that CFO, Barry shared with me after we stopped recording last time. What can we say about the CFO, Barry? Can you describe what you described to me?
Well, he first of all, he's in his late 60s, early 70s, and he's very meticulous, and he'll issue a statement which is fairly accurate, but he covets everything. Everything has to go through him. So it really creates a bottleneck.
Yep.
I mean, he's really operating not as a real CFO, that term real CFO, but he really is more of a accountant / controller type of individual.
Yeah, and you can see right away that when we go into financial here, I clicked into the detail reports. In the veracity of the information, we're in good shape. Banking and capital relationships, staying on top of taxes. But this CFO, we have the speed with which and the transparency with which financial statements are prepared. And critically, the CFO announced to the CEO, hey, I know that you're thinking about the next, where you want to take this company. I need out, and I want to get out in 4 to 6 months. And that complicates because this is the one person who has some pretty good processes inside the company. That complicates our job, Barry's job, not advising, but helping the CEO get their company where they need to be.
Right, and then getting out in a period of 3 to 6 months creates an issue, because do we get somebody new in now?
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to carry through on these other things. Plus, it takes him 3 or 4 weeks in order to get a statement done.
Yeah. Yeah, that was timeliness. This week's score goes to timeliness. Yeah.
Right. And by the time you get the statement, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep. And so now we what's cool about what's powerful about having this complete analysis, right? We've done this whole scan. We spent an hour and a half, 2 hours scanning the entire business. Well, now we're having a conversation about the CFO. We're having a real conversation about his strengths and weaknesses. And we're able to say, well, heck, if I look at senior management, our confidence in senior management is 32%. I'm going to click on senior management. Very weak in this area. And the one bright spot on the senior management team is telling us, I'd like to be gone by, optimally by Christmas. And we need to start seeing this company. You can't, we're starting to put fingers in the dam to try to stop leaks. And this really amplifies, teases out, underscores the need to have this complete understanding, because so the CEO came to Barry and said, I think we're going to need to replace the CFO. And Barry is, now Barry's in a position of saying, yeah, but we have some other work we need to do at the same time. And we can start having, thinking, the CFO, generally speaking, you can entice people to stay. Do we need to entice this person to stay, to say, listen, can you stay for a year? And if you stay for a year, and you can help us put X, Y, and Z in place, we're going to give you, it's going to be worth money to you. It's going to be worth potentially equity in the company. It's going to be worth something tangible. And that's a great point that's made in the book I've been reading recently, CEO Tools 2.0, CEO Tools 2.0. Terrific read. And this is precisely one of the areas where they drill down and say, hey, making sure your senior team is being comped with the business's goal in mind, which core value identifies, is critical.
Well, and so often we talk about succession. We talk about succession of ownership, or of people close to ownership, but so seldom is the conversation around succession of the employee base, especially the senior management team.
Yep.
In this particular case, the CFO will train somebody new coming in and will be available part-time for a period of 6 months to a year. So they've had that conversation, but that may or may not be enough.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And how are we going to make this company easier to run if the one person who is actually putting their shoulder to the wheel, not that the other senior managers aren't, but this person has processes in place. Now we can actually have a credible conversation about replacing our CFO, where we can't with other senior managers, because they're not delivering. They're not running their areas in a scalable way. Okay, so I'm going to jump back here. It's interesting. So we get into senior management, which would allow, the next thinking is human resources, but having to sit down, maybe square one is to say, okay, well, we want to make what is our ultimate strategic goal for the company? And if I click on that, that's where the conversation needs to begin. CEO has told us, I want to make this easier to run. I want to start to lay the groundwork for a transition. I need to decide thumbs up, thumbs down on whether I'm going to transition to the next generation. And but all of this is kind of happening in a vacuum because we don't have strategy. Look at this, a zero. So if we don't have a strategic goal, we don't know where we're going. And I know that I hammer on this going all the time. But if this company doesn't know where they're going, we do not have a strategic plan. And we don't have anything around which to organize the business. And maybe the strategic plan at this point is a project, creating predictable profits and cash flow sounds like a pretty good point on the map for us to aim at. And Barry, is this where you would start an engagement by saying, okay, well, let's nail down what we're going to, what's success look like?
Well, the strategic direction is one of the key things that we're going to start on.
Good.
Once, call it stage 2 of this engagement, that's my recommendation is that. At the same time, to solve the issue with the CFO, that is a burning issue.
Yep. It's going to be a fun engagement. Again, it's a successful company, right? It sounds like we're going to talk about the doom and gloom, but like sitting down with your doctor doesn't tell you about all the things about your body that are working really well. There may be a million processes going really well in your body at any given time. It's the process that's a problem that's going to get all of the attention, as it should.
Right.
So, okay. We jump into the value drivers. What else do we know? We've looked at these individually. Let's think in terms of enterprise value. And I'm actually this is a summary chart. What I'd like to focus on, I'm going to click value gap. And this is a waterfall that shows us of this $5.3 million of value that is at risk. How does it fall out? Largest to smallest in contribution to the value gap. And the things that are going to make this company easier to run, the top 3, if we can put best practices in place in these top 3, we'll have a company that is far easier to run. And let me take them in sort of reverse order. Sales and marketing, the ability to generate revenues in a proven and systematic, in a documented, process-driven fashion. If we can put that in place, even if we don't increase revenues, if we can create predictability in our current revenues, that is fantastic. Because now we're measuring it. Now we can start talking about controlling it. Financial systems. This gets back to, we just had the conversation about the controller. And when sales gets an order, how does operations deliver? And if we have a well-oiled operational machine so that an order becomes shipped and recognized revenue very fluidly, very efficiently, in a time scale that is at or below industry norms, that is terrific. That's, by the way, going to drive up customer satisfaction, which makes sales and marketing easier, which can bring recurring revenue to the table. So those are related gears. But if Barry simply puts these 3 in place, and he's going to have to dabble down here in senior management, roles and responsibilities, compensation, then we can start really making a difference in this client's company. And oh, by the way, $500,000, $600,000, or 1.1 and 700,000, $1.8 million, almost $2 million of value that's at risk, moves from this value gap into the theoretical value of the business by putting best practices in place, by creating high confidence, high predictability in these 3 areas. Barry, any comments about that?
Well, where I'm a little bit maybe confused or surprised, the senior management is so low. Because within senior management, my memory serves me correctly, there was a question regarding the reporting structure.
Yes. Yep.
And,
It's right here, roles and responsibilities.
right, and there really wasn't that.
So what you've just nailed is the tension between focusing like a laser beam on value and having a different perspective, which is okay, we know what these are worth in terms of value, but in terms of making the company easier to run, the value becomes a secondary value as an outcome of a well-run operation, right? You can't suddenly just create value. Sure, you can mitigate risks and capture value, but you can't suddenly create value. You need to create better processes and procedures, and that will create value, whether we're capturing value or actually verb creating value. And so you're spot on. This may have a very low roles and responsibilities may have a de minimis impact on the value gap lost in the rounding. However, it is a critical key. You know, it's that Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's the stone we're going to put into the middle of the temple that's going to unlock a lot of the goodness. So you're absolutely correct. The same with the strategic direction. Where is that down here? It has a very, again, lost in the rounding impact on the value gap. But if we don't have that strategic direction, if I look at this from a predictability perspective, knowing where the heck this company is going, or at least what the big project is for the next year. Over the next year, we are going to fill in the blank. And to get there, we are going to need to define roles and responsibilities, put better financial processes and procedures. By the way, roles and responsibilities, sales and marketing. Does the VP of sales or the chief sales officer have a good process, or are they simply hitting their numbers and therefore I'm not losing sleep because they're hitting their numbers? It doesn't mean it's scalable, and it doesn't mean I can prove value from an equity perspective to someone else. Does that make sense, Barry?
Yeah, I think so. What you're saying is that by plugging some of the holes, let's say in senior management, you're really plugging some of the holes up in operations, financial, and marketing.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Because what we're doing, and I'm going to jump into I'll jump into the operational value report and look at it this way. So I just click on that button. When you finish the deep dive analysis, you have access to this report. We talk about it elsewhere. This is, the AI is generating an executive summary, but what are red flags? These are bottlenecks. These are existential threats to the business. Strategic direction, reporting relationships, company culture. That's kind of the next layer down. Roles and responsibilities, policies and processes. Look at how, this is calling out these big challenge areas. They're opportunities, right? They're opportunities to make the company better, opportunities to unlock growth. And so, Barry, what you just hit on is the fact that these gears, we need to understand them individually, for example, operations or financial, but we need to understand them as gears inside a business engine. And if we think of this business as an engine, we know that there are other gears that need to be strong for the whole engine to run smoothly. So if we look at financial gap here, we know, because we've kind of had it teased out by our red flags, that there are some things that are existentially, that may not show up in the value, but that are existential threats to the business. So let's look at reporting responsibilities, reporting relationships, roles and responsibilities, strategic direction. Let's look at those and say, hey man, even if these are not showing up high on our value waterfall, they should be a high priority when it comes time to start affecting change for our client, to get our client to define their goal, and then to say, okay, here's how we're going to tackle these in sequence, as we would any good project. Did that answer your question?
It does. And if you go back to the red flags are really those things at the bottom of that previous graph, and those are foundational.
And here we're trying to not get trapped into thinking everything in terms of value, because
Right.
you can have a company that has a score of 80, has a high likelihood, that looks good on paper, but then you come to find out they've got litigation.
Well,
And slam on the brakes here. We're not selling anything.
right. And as part of the strategic direction, you're developing your plan. You're including in the strategic direction those things at the top, meaning operations, sales, marketing, and financial. That's a big part of the strategic direction.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to click back here just to give another view. I'm going to go into the growth strategy report and to just have a different, what I like about this report, and ladies and gentlemen, people are pulling, there are a number of ways. You can take these reports and use them as whole cloth. You can use the writer to generate reports. What a lot of your colleagues are doing, here are those red flags again, same exact list, even though we're in a different report. What a lot of your colleagues are doing is they have their own deliverable. So unlike other systems where we say stop what you're doing and start running your practice our way, Core Value comes at it differently. We say, hey, Barry, you've been an exit planner for a couple of decades, or for, you've been in this business for a decade and a half, and you've been a CPA for several decades. How can we make your life easier? Don't stop what you're doing and learn an entire new system. How can we take the parts of our system and integrate them into what you're doing today? And what people are doing is taking these graphics that we're walking through and applying them to their current reports. So I'm just going to scroll down here. Here we are in we're in the market drivers, and I want to get down into the operational drivers so that we can start looking at this from a predictable profits and cash flow perspective, making this company easier to run, a high degree of confidence that we're going to hit our numbers this month. Man, is there anything? I'll tell you, I've been an operator for almost 30 years. That's nirvana for me. So how do we look at a glance? We know that they don't have a strategic direction and company story. If your employees don't know what you're doing and how you're doing it, then they don't have a good view of their importance to the vision and mission. And let's look at financial. We'll keep complimenting this CFO within the context of the risk that he represents. High degree of confidence in the 7 or better if it's a high value area, if it's a high priority area. Audits, a 7, great, credible. Financial statements, you just said, Barry, slow to get them out. 3, it's a 30 out of 100. Not good, needs to be brought up to a 7. These two are critical must-haves in every company. Financial statements that are accurate and timely, and operating accurate, timely, and communicated to the team. Transparency is king. And this CEO, Barry, if I remember, this CEO is a cards close to the vest kind of person, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
It's suicidal.
Well,
I'm not going to go into the history of corporations and the fact that corporations actually represent the first communal incorporated townships in New England back in the 18th century, but that's true. Transparency is critical. Go ahead, Barry.
Well, with the operating reports as an example, those people that can drive gross profits don't even know what the gross profit margins are. So
exactly. So they're like, look how well I did. It's like yours is a mess.
So, with the operating reports, are we measuring the right things? And are those people closest to the action that can effectuate that, receiving feedback, receiving information? That then also goes to, when HR, I think it was in HR, compensation. Or maybe,
Yep.
I think that's more in senior management.
Yeah. And we'll scroll down in a second. Yeah.
Are they really effectuating, how are they judging that compensation?
And a point that CFOs make all the time. It does not have to have a dollar sign in front of it for it to be an important number.
Right.
And for that important number to be tracked, and you can only have one person, you probably all read Traction, and I believe firmly, Vern Harnish makes the same point. In fact, Jim makes the same point in CEO Tools 2.0. You can only have one person ultimately responsible for a number, and that person cannot be the CEO. Right? That you need to know, I need to know if, and I use this example because it comes out of a incredibly successful company we built in Texas. And that receptionist knew she had to answer the phone as close to the first ring as possible, meaning it rings, pick it up. And we had a one ring policy that I've carried with me to this day, or tried to. And let's, pounce on that phone because it does so much good. And that receptionist knew that was her number was one ring and the phone is answered. And if she didn't answer it at one ring, somebody else, it needed to go to a hunt group where others could be responsible, even if you're just putting the person on hold. So let's go down to senior management. I'm going to senior management. Look at this is a bloodbath. Roles and responsibilities, we're 50-50. We have 50% confidence that in our ability to clearly define senior leadership duties. And again, Barry, you've probably worked with clients like this. I've been part of companies like this where there was all sorts of mess. I would start doing part of another person's job because they were simply not doing it and it was important to me. Or other people would tell me they would do their job and then they'd walk away and ignore the issue completely. Reporting relationships are a 0 for this company. Team functionality, the senior team is a 30%, a 3. Compensation, we just pay people. And then at the end of the year, the CEO gets the checkbook out. Barry, I think you told me this. How does the CEO hand out bonuses in this?
Well, a lot of it's tax driven. Okay, a lot of privately held companies I have found pay bonuses based upon how much they want to reduce their taxes, including their own bonus.
Yep.
More so their own bonus than the bonus of the employees. But I learned in this particular company that they don't give raises. They control the raises to the senior management team by bonuses, which I thought was interesting.
That's interesting.
Are not tied to performance directly with that's measurable, but in the CEO's mind, they're tied to performance.
And sometimes if it's a weak manager and the CEO, and I have a company we're helping right now, where there's a lot of weakness in the CEO, especially a failure of leadership. It comes down to, well, I like Barry right now, so I'm going to write Barry a $10,000 check. Not Barry's been nailing his numbers all year. And again, here we have a succession plan 1. Wow. I'm going to click back and recap. Try to recap. So if we were advising this client, okay, Janice, you want to make your company easier to run. With minimal, you don't want to have a heart attack getting it there. What are we going to suggest to this client that we do? And I'm going to jump into, this is how you put this plan together. I'll click on the workbook. And the workbook, ladies and gentlemen, has the 18 growth and equity value drivers. It has with these solid dots, we have the sub drivers. And these hollow dots are the tasks. These are the things that you would have to have in place to have a high score in this area. So let's pick on senior management here for a moment. So we've said that roles and responsibilities, we've got a 5. Our senior managers seem to get the job done most of the time. What do we need to put in place that's going to fix this and get us up to, yes, our senior managers understand and embrace their roles in meeting company objectives? We're going to need an org chart. Very important. The org chart should not only be written, it should be given to every employee. Everyone should know, and it should be kept up to date. Okay? We need to have job descriptions. The CFO is accountable for, and I really like starting my job descriptions that way. What is this person accountable for? We're buying their time. So the new CFO, the person we're going to hire, we need to have a well documented, well thought out. And if we need to get outside advice on writing this job description, do it. It needs to be very, very carefully thought out because it really needs to define what success looks like. We're going to have good roles and responsibilities. Process. We need to have a process to evaluate if and how well individual objectives are being met. How well are they fulfilling? Are they meeting the definition of success that's enshrined in their job description? And then communication. And this is where companies, Barry, I don't know if you'd like to comment, but this is a place where there's generally some work to be done.
Huge amount of work in this particular company with communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the CEO's not sharing what success looks like. How can people operate at the apex of their capabilities? And then we have reporting relationships. That's very straightforward. Can the company run effectively without the CEO? Here, it's a resounding no. Team functionality. Do they effectively work together? And this is, I like to draw the distinction between collegial, meaning they get along. Maybe they go out, they have lunch together once a week. Everybody gets along. They're very friendly. And a team. And if you look at professional sports teams, a lot of times in the locker room, these guys hate each other. Don't care. They're on the field winning. I mean, you do care because that can create a toxic atmosphere, but I'm exaggerating to make a point. Comp. We just covered this, but you can see how the executable growth plan is saying, hey, here are the areas where the company is weak and where we're going to build strength. So Barry's role is to go out and research comp for like companies, and then to bring to figure out how we can create competitive compensation. And by the way, and Barry, you just made this point. If it needs to be on a success fee basis, if the company's budget is tight and they can't just hand out raises to bring people in line with the market, no problem. You can get them there by saying, hey, here's how we define success. Here's what success is going to mean to the bottom line of this company. And here's your share in that bottom line. Because it needs to be performance-based, okay? So this is how, with core value, when you're sitting down to plan with a customer, a client, how to get them to reach their goal, this is how you get them there. Does that make sense, Barry?
Oh,
I know it does.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And strategic direction, and a lot has been written with how to define strategic direction. But what you're going to notice here, we're talking about that supports the owner's personal goals. This is where business coaches and financial planners can be such critical players because they bring this personal goal. What does it mean to me? If I'm going to bust my hump, if I'm going to work hard, if I'm going to continue to work 60-hour weeks for the next 2, 5, 10 years, what is it going to do for my family? And that's what keeps us in the game. So, and the owner has defined for Barry what she wants, which is to start thinking about how to transition out of the business, to start thinking about to whom she will transition the business, how that gets put in place, and do it all the while doing it in a way so she can start pulling back from the business, make the company run effectively without me. How do I move from being tactical to being strategic to being purely strategic, like a chairman of the board, where I'm coming into work 1 day a week, 2 days a week, not 6 days a week?
Well, your statement here regarding owners' personal goals to me is extremely key in the sense that you need to understand what those personal goals are so that you know what the business, what number you're looking at as far as value.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right.
So that there's alignment between the owner will get out of the business and what they need to be able to support their personal goals.
Yep.
Because unless there's alignment, that next stage in your life will be a failure.
That's right.
or could be, I should say.
And that's no fun whatsoever. We haven't, I have a friend who says, I haven't come this far to only have come this far.
Right.
And there's a lot of actually, wry humor, but truth in that. Okay. I think we can stop here. We've talked for about 40 minutes about this business. I'd like to stop the recording and, and and then maybe Barry, we'll put together, we'll start thinking in terms of a written plan. And if that's something that is, we can share from a high level with people to help them understand how we move from discovery through the deep dive analysis. We have the executable growth plan now. How are we going to line these things out in sequence to help the client reach their goals? What would that look like? You want anything you'd like to add before we close up this session?
No, I think we did a decent job of going through it.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, you bring a lot of experience to the conversation, which is incredibly valuable, and I appreciate you sharing it. All right, I'm gonna turn off the recording. There we go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Barry.